Hi everyone, welcome to my Bake Along series. Now, are you looking for a lovely special occasion cake? Well, you've got to give my Danish layer cake a try. It is made up of a buttery vanilla cake sandwiched with a vanilla pastry cream, raspberry jam, and smothered in a Chantilly cream. I'll walk you through all the steps to make my delicious Danish layer cake. Let's kick things off by making the cake layers. So I'm going to bake 2 buttery rich vanilla cake layers. I'm using the reverse method, so that means I'm going to sift my dry ingredients and add those to my mixer first. I've got my cake and pastry flour, because we do want this to be a delicate, tender cake. And I'll sift in my sugar at the same time with the flour. I'll rely on some baking powder and just a little bit of salt to balance everything out. When you're working with cake and pastry flour, there really is no exception when it comes to sifting. You can see right now, because of the fine milling of cake and pastry flour, it has a tendency to clump up. You need to sift it. There we go. The next step for the reverse method is to add the butter to the dry mixture. So I've got my unsalted butter already cut up into pieces and it's cool, so just room temperature. If it's a hot day, I would say under room temperature. Often when I'm using the reverse method, I don't pay attention when I'm cutting in the butter too closely because you don't have to worry about overmixing the butter. Because this is such a butter-rich cake, you can actually end up creating a dough before you make your liquid. So keep an eye on it, don't get distracted. This really takes about 30 seconds to a minute on low speed, and you want to stop the mixer or electric beaters if that's what you're using before the dough or the ingredients come together to look like a dough. So we're looking for a dry, crumbly mixture. There we go. All right, now that the beginning of my cake batter looks like a streusel topping, you can see it's sort of got that even but crumbly mixture. Now I know it's time to add the wet ingredients. And I like to combine them together. So it's a butter-rich cake, it's also an egg-rich cake. I've got 4 whole eggs, a bit of milk, and of course my vanilla extract. With the mixer going, I'll add this in about 2 or 3 additions, mix it on low speed until everything's combined, and then I'll increase the speed to medium-high and really work in some volume. That's why you use the paddle attachment, and it'll aerate the batter, make it nice and fluffy. Okay, I want to give you a little confidence building tip here. The temperature of your ingredients can really impact the consistency of your batter. So if your butter is cold and your eggs are cold and your milk is cold, well, your batter is going to be more thick and dense. And if everything is at room temperature and even temperature, well then your result might be a little more fluid. Either way, your cakes will bake up fine. So I don't want you to be concerned if you find it's a little thicker or thinner. So long as your measurements are true, your cake is going to be delicious. I've got my pans ready. So these are two 8-inch pans. They happen to be springform pans. You don't have to use springform pans. I grease them lightly, bottom and sides, dust the sides with flour and line the bottoms with parchment paper. It just makes it easier to extract the cakes from the pan, even when they're springform pans. Now, I'll divide the batter between the two pans. I give them a little tap. These take about 30 minutes to bake. I use a skewer to insert in the center of the cakes. I usually set my timer about 2 to 3 minutes before the cakes are done, just to keep an eye on them. They'll turn a rich golden brown. When the skewer inserted in the center comes out clean, you know you're done. Now you want to let those cakes cool completely before it's time to assemble your cake. Here are these gorgeous cake layers out of the oven and cooled completely. You can see that beautiful golden brown top to them. Oh, it's such a delicious buttery cake. And they're thick enough because I want to slice them horizontally. That way we're getting a 4-layer cake ready to fill. So let's talk about those fillings. Just set those aside. The first is a classic vanilla pastry cream. Now I've got a video on how I make my signature pastry cream. It's on the link below. I've also included the complete pastry cream recipe in case you didn't want to go check out the other video, but you should. And then what I want you to do is while the cakes are baking, you can make your pastry cream. Both have time to cool and chill. In fact, that's a hot tip. When you're assembling a cake with soft fillings like a pastry cream or the raspberry jam that will also be included in the cake, it's a good idea to chill your cakes about an hour before you want to assemble. It makes those fillings stick and cling on to the cake just a little bit easier. Now, the last element that makes a Danish layer cake, we've got our buttery cake, our vanilla pastry cream, raspberry jam. Now we need a Chantilly cream. Just a vanilla flavored whipped cream on top. I've got my whipping cream in the mixer and I'll mix it to a soft peak. I'm going to pipe the icing on the outside of the cake. Now, when I'm using whipped cream for piping or finishing detail, whether it's for a roulade or bûche de Noël or a cake like this, I always add a bit of instant skim milk powder. You can add it at any point in the whipping process, early on, I'll add it now, or later on, and the proteins within the skim milk powder stabilize the fat within the whipping cream so it holds its detail for days. And that means you get beautiful clean slices and a cake that holds its shape. So I'm gonna whip this up, add a little bit of icing sugar to sweeten it and some vanilla, and we'll be ready to assemble. My cream is almost finished whipping, so I can add my icing sugar and that vanilla. Just let it finish up. There, I think I have whipped cream all over me. Yeah, that's great volume. There, I'll set the cream aside. And now it's time to assemble the cake itself. I'll start with the first layer. I do like to assemble this cake on the platter I wish to serve it, simply because the whipped cream is more delicate than, say, a Swiss buttercream that sets in the fridge, so I don't want to have to be transferring the cake from one plate to another. A serrated knife is your best tool, and I'm going to cut the cake from the outside in. That way I know it's going to be level. Look at that gorgeous buttery interior. I've got my raspberry jam. Now, there are all sorts of ways you can assemble a Danish layer cake, so long as you have the 4 elements: the cake, the pastry cream, the raspberry, and the Chantilly cream. I have seen people layer the pastry cream and raspberry cream together in one layer before they put the next cake layer on top. I've seen just a single layer of raspberry jam with 2 pastry creams. So it really is up to you. I'm alternating, and I'm actually going to have the pastry cream visible on the top of the cake. So I'll start with the raspberry jam, give it a little stir. Just a nice even layer is all it needs. I take it almost to the edges, but not quite, because once I put the next cake layers on top, it will push the jam to the outside edges, just to complete it, like so. Okay, and now I'll do the same with the pastry cream. Give it a little stir. And do the same. Spread it almost to the edges. If you have a little bit of cream or jam that leaks out the side, don't worry. You're going to pipe the whipped cream on the outside and it'll cover anything up. I can need a little more pastry cream in there. Now, I'll slide this. I'm not going to slice the second cake layer on the assembled cake. The next cake layer goes on top. Now for more raspberry jam. The pastry cream can be a little jiggly, so I want to be gentle with it. And so this will be the top of the cake, finished with the pastry cream. If you want, you could put the layer of pastry cream on top and cover it with whipped cream if you want, but I like to show off the pastry cream. It's a nice hint of what's inside. beautifully smooth. And now onto the Chantilly cream, which I'm going to put into a piping bag. I've put a large star tip into the bottom of the piping bag, so it's ready to fill. And what I'm going to do is start from the base of the cake and pipe up the sides. So it's a single star piping that goes up the side of the cake and covers everything. Like so. All right, 2 more moves and the cake is complete. I want to put a finishing touch, a ring of whipped cream around the top of the cake. So I'm going to fill up my piping bag again, make sure I have enough. There we go. Whoa, it's a bit of a workout here. And the finishing touch is a ring of raspberries just inside that Chantilly. I don't put the berries on top of the cream because the cream is so soft, it'll just crush any detail. You've just put the effort into putting on top of the cake. It's a bit of a retro looking cake, isn't it? But I kind of like that. It's comforting. Even if you're new to this cake, there's a sense of familiarity about it. The simplicity of cake, cream, raspberries, you have to love it. And there we go. And there it is, your Danish layer cake. Oh, now, even though, of course, you know I'm going to slice into this to show you the inside, it is best to chill this cake so you can assemble it even a full day ahead because you've got that skim milk powder in the whipped cream to hold it stable, but it allows the layers, the pastry cream absorbs into the cake as well as the jam just a little bit so everything locks into place. Right now it's a bit fragile. My slice might be a bit messy, so forgive me that, but once chilled, it slices very cleanly. If you were making this as a birthday cake, you even have space to write happy birthday or put in candles. It really is an ideal cake for a special occasion. Actually, I'm impressed how well it's sliced. I've never cut into this cake freshly assembled. And it did hold together really nicely. Look at that gorgeous interior, the multiple layers with the cream and the jam. This is definitely what you would call a delightful cake. Call your aunt over. She's gonna love this cake. Oh, I really hope you'll give this recipe a try. With the 4 elements, you've got a buttery rich cake, the pastry cream, the raspberry filling, and of course the chantilly on the outside to make this truly beautiful. Please give this recipe a try. Let me know if it's a cake you know well and if someone in your family makes it or if you've got a family recipe. I love hearing those stories. I'll see you again for another delicious recipe on this Bake Along series. Now it's time for cake. I have a soft spot for pastry cream. Oh, with the raspberry too. Truly delicious.